For today's Christmas in July project, we're going to make hot cocoa pockets in 2 different variations. Hey guys, it's Beth. Welcome. So I'm still playing with this Recollections pad, Christmas, that is from Michael's many years ago. And I thought this paper would be great. It's had a very much of a fun kid feel to me. So you've seen that some of the cards I've made will be donated to Cards for Hospitalized Kids. And then I also thought that these patterns would be great for hot cocoa packets. So you guys see me make these in some form or fashion every year for craft shows. And we have, I think, 7 shows already on the books for this fall. And so I have like a specific number, like a gold number that I want to hit for the number of hot cocoa pockets that I want to have on hand, so that it's not something that I just maybe have to restock. I don't have to actually stock up for those shows. So this pad was a great help. I have 2 different forms here, and one of them is a method you've seen me do before. It uses kind of a long envelope. And so I have some of these basic pockets. I have about 50 of these so far. And then I tried a new pocket. This is a project that I found over on Rejoice and Create. I will leave a link to her video below and her blog. She's got both that kind of tied together on how to make. It's kind of a gusseted pocket, if you can see that. So it will maybe hold a little more. So I'm not sure if I'll use these for my standard hot cocoa packets or if I'll use them for maybe the ones that I add a little bit more into and I can charge a little bit more for. So we'll see how that plays out. But I have about 50 of these as well. So that used up a good chunk of the paper, and I thought I would share with you. I'll show the envelope ones again, and then I'll show you how I made the ones with the gussets from Create and Rejoice. So let me pull out my paper and we will get to making our pockets. Okay, you can use the number 10 business envelopes for these. I have done that in the past. I have a stash of these envelopes. They're like 10 inches long, or 10 1/4 inches long or so by 5 inches wide. And I had found them on clearance somewhere and thought I could use them for something. And so I thought that I would go ahead and use them for hot cocoa packets this year. So my dimensions are going to be different if you're using a number 10 business envelope. So I'm not going to necessarily give you dimensions, but I will show you the process. So if you use the business envelopes, which you can pick up a box of 30 to 50, I don't remember the number, at Dollar Tree for $1.25, or I'm sure you can pick them up fairly cheap at Walmart also. You would take your envelope and measure it, or cut it in half, and then measure the length and width, and then you would trim your paper to that. So don't stress over my dimensions on this one. Just focus on the process. So first thing I do is I don't lick all those envelopes. My tongue and taste buds wouldn't be able to handle it. I simply just use my ATG. You could use wet glue, you could use whatever glue you want. ATG just happens to be quickest to seal that shut, and then I cut the envelope in half. So you end up with 2 pockets out of 1 envelope. So we're going to make 1 today. And then depending on how you want to decorate yours, I tend to do pattern paper on the front and the back. And I usually trim my pattern paper, so it's about 1/8 of an inch, or I guess it's about 1/4 of an inch smaller in width and height than my envelope. That way I have a small border of white going around my pattern paper. So I already have mine pre-cut. And then for this particular one, I'm also going to add some embellishments to the front. So I just have a scrap strip of paper, and I'm going to go ahead and glue that on before I put it on my envelope, just in case it would be longer, then I could trim it up. I ended up kind of mass producing these, so I did them in like an assembly line form. So I had all my pieces cut down kind of before I started. And so I wanted to make sure that just in case not everything was exactly the same, like this one is going to be just a hair whiter. So I do like to put that on, and I'm using wet glue. You can use double-sided tape, like the score tape, the scrapbook.com tape. You can use that. I am just making so many of these, it's just more economical for me to use wet glue. So I have used both Barely Art and Art Glitter Glue on these, and they've done fine. But if you're using wet glue, I do suggest you burnish it down so that it stays. I just recommend not using your regular tape runner, because once these get bulky items in it, like when you put your hot cocoa packets or like and the candy cane or whatever else you're going to stick in there, you want to make sure that it's going to hold up if it, bulges a little bit. So once I get that strip on, then I'm going to go ahead and add it to my envelope. And you can do different patterns on the front and back. I have done that before too. It depends on the paper I have. In this case, like I said, I cut all the panels, together, and then I cut all the strips together. So I just went ahead and used kind of the same paper for the front and back because they were already kind of cut in pairs anyway. So. Burnish it down, and the base of that is done. And so then you can just embellish however you want. I tend to keep my embellishments fairly simple. I don't want to spend a ton of time on each one of these because they don't sell for a whole lot. So it's like you don't want to invest a ton of time and expensive embellishments on something that's not going to sell for more than a couple dollars at the craft show. If you're gifting them, by all means, put your heart into it. Make it as embellished as you want, because you are gifting it to someone who will appreciate it, and it's definitely more worth the embellishing for a gift than it is for something that's going to sell pretty cheaply. Anyway, that was my soapbox. So I also had some little scraps, and so I thought I would kind of add a little flag at the top because I'm going to offset my little sentiment here. And the sleigh rides and hot cocoa, this is a stamp. It's a recollection stamp set from many years ago. It just has some fun like treat sentiments on it. And so I decided to pull that out, and then I ran it through with a stitched rounded edge rectangle die, and then I did the next size for a mat behind it as well. So again, I did these kind of like in bulk, so it didn't take me all that much time for one specific packet. These go together really quickly. They're a great way to use scraps, or if you have a bunch of tags, say like from Dollar Tree, or that you've picked up on clearance after Christmas from somewhere, this is a great way to use up some of those tags, like the Christmas tags. I've done that a lot. And actually you'll see here in a minute another way that I embellished some using a Dollar Tree item as well. So I'm just going to throw this little banner up here. It used up a scrap, and it just added a little bit more quick embellishment. So just like that. I mean, I did this live with you, and it's been like just a few minutes that it took me to make this one. So if you are making a bunch of them together, like I said, assembly line it, and it's, pretty quick and efficient, and you can make a bunch in no time at all. It's a great way to use up paper. This used up about probably a third of a sheet of 12 by 12. I'm going to show you one next that uses half a sheet of 12 by 12, which is why I wanted to do that, because it made working through this pad a little bit quicker. For this one, I'm going to start with a 12 by 12. And you want to make sure, I guess you can do whatever you want. You would, if you're going to use a directional paper. I like to use non-directional paper for this one because it's all one piece, like it's all together. And so if it's directional, one side will be right, the other side will be wrong. So depending on your pattern, you know, you can do that if you want. I've been trying to use non-directional paper for these. And then directional paper I used for these since I like applied each one separately. So this is all one piece. So if you had, you know, Christmas trees or something, your Christmas trees might be upside down on the back. Maybe that doesn't matter. Okay, but you start by trimming your paper down to 6 by 12 inch strips. And like I said, I like this one because it, you know, one sheet made 2 pockets. It was a quicker way for me to use up my paper. And this pad had 180 sheets and there were a bunch left. And so I really wanted to get through it. So once you have your paper trimmed down, you will need a way to score. So whether you're using a ruler and a stylus, a trimmer with a scoring blade, I'm going to pull out my rough looking Martha Stewart scoreboard. And you're going to score, you're going to turn it sideways. You're going to score at 1 inch. And I'm just using like the small end of my double-ended stylus. And then you're going to score at 5 3/4, 6 1/4, and 11. If you are using double-sided paper, that's really where this part comes in handy. If you're using single-sided paper, like these 1 inch score marks on either end aren't really a big deal. Like I kept them in there just because I didn't want to have to trim it down and create more scraps for myself. So then you want to turn it upright and you're going to score at 3/4, and 5 1/4. And then you want to turn it upside down, or I think it's just easier to score. You could probably leave it the other way, but you're going to score at 1/2 inch and 5 1/2. Okay, you have all your score lines. And now, again, if you have double-sided paper, you can fold this top out and have your other pattern showing. Since mine's not, I'm just going to fold it in and it just kind of reinforces the top. But I'm going to do this first and glue it down so that I can get the side fold lines folded a little more crisp, and these will fold. I don't have to like fold them a couple times, if that makes any sense. Brain's not wanting to work well today. And this project does work a little better if you're using stiffer paper. This is like that thin paper, you know, that those big pads tend to come in. And so if you have thicker paper, you know, like double-sided, it would probably work better as far as trying to get all of your folds and stuff. So you're going to take the innermost fold line and fold it in. On both sides. So this was the one that we did at, I believe, 3/4 and 5 3/4. And then you're going to take that next one, the next score line, and you're going to fold it out. And so you're going to kind of have like a mountain fold V here in a second. And then we still have these two score lines here in the center, and this is what's going to be the base. And again, Rejoice and Create does a much better, she's made, I mean, I've made a bunch of these, but she just does a better job of explaining. So that's why I'm not going to leave dimensions below. I'm going to send you to her blog for dimensions, and you can check out her video too for just more instructions and how to create. So now we have this little tab. We're going to have a tab here that you're going to want to trim in on. And so now you've got this little tab piece that sticks up. We're going to use that to help assemble. So you can pick either side. It doesn't really matter. And I take this little tab and just put a little bit of wet glue on it. And then I'm going to hold that together. And then do the same thing over here. And it just kind of helps that stand up. And one thing I just remembered that I wanted to do before I should have done it when it was flat, and I may not be able to do it. I may just have to go ahead and do it once it's assembled. But it is easier to decorate these once they are laying flat. So what I might do is just bend that one back. So the width on this front part here is now just shy of 4.5. So it's, for me, it's usually in between 4 3/8 and 4.5. So I have another scrap strip that I'm going to do, and kind of similar to what we did before, I'm going to do a strip across the front. And if you're gluing things down on the front like this, that's why it's easier to do it before you assemble, just because that way you can burnish and not squish your pocket. If you're using score tape, you might be able to do it a little more easier once it's assembled than if you're using wet glue. So this was a cut apart from one of the pages in the pad, and so I'm going to use that here. And I've got some red cardstock just to help it stand out a little bit more. So I created a little mat, and we'll go ahead and glue that on. Like that. And then I will assemble that panel here on the front. And if you wanted to, at this point, you could also take like a notch punch and cut, or like a circle punch and cut a little circle notch at the top. I didn't on these, but sometimes I do when I use like the envelopes. Okay, so we used that little tab to attach the back part. And now we're going to attach the flaps here to each other. So that's going to create that gusseted side. And so I just take glue and I add it to whatever is going to be the inside flap. And if you're using a score tape, it kind of goes a little faster. Since I'm using wet glue, I kind of need to work it so that it's gonna stay in place until the glue dries enough. And so there you can see we have a little gusset panel. So same thing over here. And there we go. So there is our pocket. And this is a little wider. You could stick mug cakes in here. I've done that before. Different types of hot cocoa packets. You could do a little get well thing and stick some maybe chicken noodle soup. Like you can buy the packets of chicken noodle soup, stick it in there. I mean, limitless options here. But it's wider. Let me tell you. It is about 3/4 of an inch, like at its natural width. But it could go even a little wider too, depending on how, much room across your items took up. So anyway, that was my other one. And like I said, I made a bunch of these, and on several of these packets, like the pouches here and then my envelopes, I used some dollar store cards to decorate. Let me grab the boxes and I'll show you what those were. So I picked these up several years ago from Dollar Tree. There's a Go Fish game, a matching game, but they are Christmas themed, and they've been in my stash for several years. And so I managed to use up both boxes. There were 36 cards in each box, so I used 72 of these cards, and they just made like fun little embellishments for the front. And then they took up enough room, I didn't have to do a whole lot. So that's just another option too, if you happen to have these or something similar. But those are my 2 hot cocoa packets for you today, and my Christmas in July project. Hope you guys enjoyed. Please be sure to go check out the links below to Create and Rejoice, and she can give you more information. And she actually has a ton of cute little pouches and pockets and holders for all kinds of treats. So be sure to check her out as well. But I thank you guys so very much for your time and hope you all have a very crafty day.